My family cut off contact with me because I stopped funding their extravagances, then they begged me, but I left them to face what they had done. I'm a 28-year-old guy named Alex, and my family has always had a habit of cutting people off over the smallest things. Growing up, it was just normal. One day, someone was in our lives, and the next, they were gone. No explanations, no discussions. My parents didn't do fights or disagreements. If someone upset them, that person was erased. I remember being a kid and suddenly realizing my uncle wasn't coming to family gatherings anymore. When I asked, my mom just said, "He disrespected us." Later, I found out he had simply missed one Thanksgiving because of work. My cousin? She got into a college my parents didn't approve of, so she was cut off too. My parents had a rule: if you're not with us, you're against us. For a long time, I didn't question it. It was just how things worked. You upset my parents, you disappeared from our lives. But as I got older, I started noticing how ridiculous it was. People weren't committing betrayals, they were just living their lives. Still, I never challenged it. I kept my head down and played along, even as family members slowly vanished one by one. Everything changed when I moved out after college. I stayed in touch with my parents but kept a distance from the drama. I was done pretending to be okay with their no-contact rules, but I also wasn't interested in picking fights. I had my own life, a good job, and a great girlfriend, 26, who helped me realize just how dysfunctional my family was. Then, about a year ago, I made the mistake of speaking up. My parents had started going after my younger cousin for something stupid. I don't even remember what. They were talking about cutting him off, and I finally said, maybe instead of shutting people out, you should just talk to them. That was all it took. They flipped. My dad said I was being disloyal, and my mom acted like I had betrayed the family. By the end of the conversation, they told me, if you don't support the family, you're not part of it. And just like that, I was erased. At first, it stung, but honestly, it didn't take long to realize how much better my life was without them. No more walking on eggshells, no more worrying about getting shut out over nothing. My girlfriend and friends became my real family. Then a few weeks ago, I got a message from my aunt, the one my parents had cut off years ago. She said my parents were suddenly reaching out to people they had thrown away. Why? Because they were in trouble. Turns out my dad, 56, lost his job. My mom, 54, was struggling to keep up with expenses. They had burned so many bridges that now, when they needed help, they had almost no one left to turn to. Not long after, my younger sister, 23, who still lives at home, reached out to me privately. She told me our parents regretted cutting me off but were too stubborn to actually apologize. Their situation had gotten worse because, even after my dad lost his job, they kept spending like nothing had changed, ordering takeout, buying unnecessary gadgets, and ignoring bills until it was too late. Now they were panicking. Instead of apologizing, they were acting like nothing had happened. And just like that, my parents messaged me. It wasn't an apology, it wasn't even an acknowledgement of what they did, just a simple, "Hey, how have you been?" I knew where this was going. They weren't asking about me because they cared, they were testing the waters, trying to see if they could ease back into my life. I responded, keeping it short and neutral. They acted casual at first, reminiscing about old family traditions and even asking about work. It almost felt normal, until my dad casually mentioned how tough things had been lately, and my mom made an offhand remark about how families should stick together in hard times. That's when I realized where this was heading. My dad mentioned that the job market was tough. My mom made a comment about how family sticks together through thick and thin. They weren't outright asking for money yet, but it was obvious they were building up to it. My girlfriend saw the messages and immediately told me to be careful. She reminded me that my parents only reached out when they needed something. This reminds me of my own dad, she admitted. He'd disappear for months, then come back only when he was broke or in trouble. People like that don't change, they just get more desperate. They didn't miss me, they didn't regret cutting me off, they just regretted the consequences, and she was right. Now I'm stuck. Logically, I know they don't deserve another chance, but emotions aren't always logical. They raised me, and some part of me still craves the kind of parents they pretended to be. But then I remember, when they shut me out, it wasn't just silence, it was deliberate, callous, and absolute. Do they regret losing me or just the convenience I once provided? They didn't just stop talking to me, they made it clear I was no longer part of the family. They only changed their minds when it started hurting them. So now I have to decide, do I give them another chance, or do I let them deal with the consequences of their own actions? The messages from my parents didn't stop. At first they kept it casual, like nothing had ever happened. Random "hope you're doing well" texts, a picture of an old family pet, even a weird attempt at small talk about the weather. It was clear they were trying to feel things out before getting to the real reason they were reaching out. I ignored most of it, only replying with short, neutral responses when necessary. I wasn't interested in playing along with whatever game they were running. Then my younger sister texted me. She still lived at home, so she had a front row seat to whatever was going on. She made it clear our parents weren't going to apologize. They regretted cutting me off, but not because they had a change of heart. They were desperate. They needed something, and since they'd burned so many bridges, I was one of the last options left. A few days later, my parents escalated. The messages started coming in more frequently, and this time, they didn't beat around the bush. My dad mentioned that things had been rough lately, and my mom brought up how family should always be there for each other. That was when I decided to respond properly for the first time. I kept it surface level, talking about work, my life, my plans. I didn't ask how they were doing or bring up anything from the past, just enough to acknowledge them without opening the door too wide. That's when the shift happened. The next message was about my dad losing his job. According to him, it had happened 6 months ago, and he hadn't been able to find anything since. My mom added that they were managing for now but struggling with mortgage payments. Then came the comments about how stressful everything had been and how family always sticks together through tough times. I let the message sit for a while before answering. My girlfriend had already warned me this would happen. She told me my parents wouldn't outright ask for money at first. They'd ease into it, guilt-trip me, make me feel like helping them was the right thing to do. And she was right. So I cut straight to the point. I asked why they were suddenly so interested in reconnecting now, after ignoring me for a year. Silence. Then my dad finally responded, "Let's not dwell on the past." That was it. No explanation, no apology, just a brush-off. Like what they did wasn't even worth talking about. I wasn't surprised. I knew how they operated. Apologizing meant admitting they were wrong, and they weren't capable of that. So I pushed. I reminded them how easily they cut me out, how they had no problem pretending I didn't exist when it suited them. I asked them why they thought I'd just forget all of that because they were suddenly in trouble. This time, my mom was the one to reply. Her tone completely changed. She said she never thought I'd turn my back on my own family, that they only did what they thought was best, and that they never imagined things would end up like this. Then the tears started. At least, that's what my sister told me later. Apparently, my mom was crying in the other room, saying she failed as a mother because I didn't care about them. My sister texted me again, saying she understood why I was angry, but that things at home were bad. She was worried. I could tell she was caught in the middle, trying not to take sides. But I wasn't playing their game. I told my parents straight up, I wasn't even considering helping them unless they acknowledged what they did. And then, nothing. No response, no argument, just silence. I sat there watching the screen, waiting to see what their next move would be. I already knew they wouldn't apologize, but I was curious to see how long it would take before they found another angle. A few days passed without a word from my parents. No texts, no calls. After their sudden silence, I knew they were planning their next move. They wouldn't just let this go. Then, right on schedule, a message popped up. This time, it was different. Instead of ignoring the past, they acknowledged it, but in a twisted way. They didn't apologize. Instead, they said they regretted how things played out. That was it. No actual admission of wrongdoing, no acknowledgement of how they cut me off without a second thought, just a vague, meaningless statement that let them avoid taking responsibility. Then came the shift. My dad followed up with a message about how I had forced their hands by choosing to be distant instead of working things out. He twisted it, making it seem like they never truly cut me off, that I had abandoned them, not the other way around. Classic gaslighting. He said they never wanted to cut me off, but I had forced their hand. That was the moment I realized nothing had changed. They weren't reaching out because they wanted to fix things. They were trying to rewrite history, making it seem like I was the one who abandoned them. Then my sister called. She sounded tense. The situation at home had gotten worse. My dad was still unemployed, my mom was barely keeping up with bills, and the pressure was building. She said they were fighting more, snapping at each other over little things. The stress was making everything worse. She told me she understood why I was mad, but she was caught in the middle. She didn't want to lose me too. Unlike me, she wasn't financially independent yet. She was still finishing school and relied on our parents for housing. She couldn't afford to be cut off like the rest of us, so she had no choice but to tolerate them until she had an exit plan. Not long after that, I got another message, this time from my aunt. She had been cut off by my parents years ago but had always stayed in touch with me. Now she had some news, apparently. My parents were telling the extended family that I was refusing to help them in their time of need. They were making it seem like they had reached out to me with open arms, only for me to turn my back on them. I could already imagine the way they were spinning it. In their version of events, they were the struggling parents, doing everything they could to mend the broken relationship, while I was the cold-hearted son holding on to a grudge. Then, finally, the real reason for all of this came out. My dad sent another message. This time, he didn't try to dance around it. He said that money was tight, that they were falling behind on mortgage payments, and that things were getting desperate. I wasn't surprised. My parents had always lived beyond their means, spending more than they earned. They had never saved for emergencies, and with my dad losing his job, their financial mismanagement finally caught up with them. He didn't ask outright, but the meaning was clear. I ignored it at first. Then, a few hours later, he sent another message. This time, it was direct. He asked if I could lend them some money. That was it. That was why they were reaching out. Not because they missed me, not because they regretted what they did. They wanted money. I told them point blank that they didn't get to cut people off whenever they wanted, and then expect help when things didn't go their way. Actions had consequences. That's when my mom broke down. She went full guilt trip mode, saying she never thought her own son would abandon them in their time of need. She accused me of being just like the relatives we had to cut off. That was rich. I let her messages sit there, unread, for a while. Then my girlfriend saw them and reminded me again that I wasn't responsible for fixing their mess. She told me I wasn't wrong for standing my ground. Then my sister called again. This time, she sounded upset. She told me our parents were getting worse. The stress, the tension, the constant arguing, it was wearing her down. She didn't beg me to help them, but she made it clear she didn't want to lose me too. I reassured her that she was the only person in that house I cared about. I told her I would always support her, but I wouldn't let our parents manipulate me. Then the real desperation started. The texts kept coming. First, they tried guilt-tripping me. Then they switched tactics, acting like nothing was wrong, sending me casual messages, pretending like everything was normal. When that didn't work, the calls started. Over and over, my phone would buzz, my parents switching between my mom trying to play the emotional card, and my dad acting like this was just a normal family disagreement. I hovered over the block button more than once, but part of me hesitated. Did I really want to cut them off completely? That's when I took it to Reddit. I laid everything out. The no contact, the sudden change when they needed something, the guilt tripping, the manipulation. The responses were overwhelming, and they all said the same thing. I didn't owe them anything. They made this bed, now they had to lie in it. But even after reading all of that, I still had a decision to make. Did I walk away for good, or did I wait to see if my parents would ever truly change? The flood of messages started early in the morning. I woke up to my phone buzzing nonstop, texts, missed calls, voicemails. My parents had officially dropped the fake kindness act. At first, it was the usual guilt tripping. My mom sent long, emotional messages about how she never thought I'd turn my back on family. My dad made vague comments about how family sticks together and how they'd always been there for me when I needed them. Then the shift. The messages went from passive-aggressive to outright aggressive. My dad finally snapped, abandoning any attempt at being civil. He called me selfish, ungrateful, and accused me of throwing away everything they ever did for me. He claimed I was just like the other disloyal family members who had betrayed them. Minutes later, my mom followed up with her own meltdown. Long, frantic walls of text about how she had sacrificed everything for me, how she gave me life, only for me to abandon her when she needed me most. She claimed I was being manipulated by outside influences, and that I needed to remember where I came from. Then my sister messaged me. She sounded panicked. My parents were arguing constantly now, snapping at each other over everything. The house was tense, miserable. Every time she tried to stay out of it, they dragged her back in. She told me that when they weren't fighting with each other, they were going on and on about how I had turned against them. Then the family group chat exploded. My parents had posted one of their infamous cryptic messages, the kind that doesn't name names but makes it painfully obvious who they're talking about. Something about how some family members only care when things are easy but abandon you when times get tough. A few distant relatives immediately jumped in, confused, asking what was going on. Some of them privately messaged me, wanting to know if everything was okay. Not long after, my aunt, the one who had warned me about all of this, called. She wasn't surprised. She told me my parents were now reaching out to anyone they could think of, including long-lost relatives they had cut off years ago, begging for money. Then she told me something else. They were twisting the story. Instead of telling people the truth, that they cut me off, ignored me for a year, and only reached out when they needed something, they were claiming that I had abandoned them for my girlfriend. They were telling people that she was controlling me, that she was the reason I refused to help. I showed my girlfriend the messages. She wasn't even shocked, just annoyed. She had seen this coming from a mile away. That's when my dad sent his final move. He gave me an ultimatum. He said if I didn't help them financially, they would have no choice but to sell the house and move somewhere far away, cutting ties permanently. I responded with the truth. You've cut off almost everyone in your life. Now you're facing the consequences. That's not my problem. Then my mom sent her final message. Fine. If you won't be part of this family, don't bother coming back when it's too late. A few minutes later, my sister called. She was crying. She told me she didn't know what to do. She hated how our parents acted, but she still loved them. She didn't want to lose me, but she was scared of what would happen if she fully turned against them. I told her what I had told her before. I would always be there for her. She was the only one I cared about in that house, but I was done enabling our parents. It started with Facebook. My parents had gone silent for a few days after their dramatic final message, but I knew better than to believe they had given up. Sure enough, their next move was a public pity party. Their posts were vague but obvious. Long, dramatic paragraphs about being betrayed by those you love the most, and how family should always stand together, but some people forget where they came from. There were comments from their friends and a few distant relatives, all offering sympathy, all feeding into their narrative that they were the victims. Then my uncle called. He was one of the first people my parents had cut off years ago over some nonsense. I hadn't talked to him much over the years, but he had always been decent to me. Now he wanted to let me know that my parents had reached out, not to him directly, but to a mutual relative who still kept tabs on them. Word had spread fast among the family that they were scrambling for help. They were desperate enough to try reconnecting with the people they had erased, and it backfired. He shut them down immediately. He told me they were scrambling, reaching out to anyone they could think of, trying to find someone, anyone, who would take their side. Then the family split into sides. Some relatives sent me messages, fully supportive, saying I was doing the right thing. Others weren't so kind. A few distant cousins, people I barely spoke to, messaged me with the usual guilt-tripping, "Family helps each other no matter what happens. They're still your parents. You'll regret it if something happens to them." I ignored the first few messages, but when the texts kept coming, I had enough. I sent one group message to all of them. Where were all of you when they cut me off? You didn't care then, don't care now. Silence. Then my sister messaged me again. Things at home were getting worse. My parents were starting to panic. Money was running out faster than they expected, and they were scrambling for options. She said they were constantly stressed, arguing more than ever. The tension in the house was unbearable. Then out of nowhere, my mother reached out again. This time she wasn't angry, she wasn't guilt-tripping. She asked if we could just talk, just a few minutes, no pressure. Against my better judgment, I agreed, but I set my terms. I would listen, but I wouldn't tolerate manipulation or excuses. The call started slow. She sounded exhausted. She admitted they had made mistakes, but the moment I asked for specifics, she started shifting the blame. She said they only cut me off because I forced their hand, that I had put them in a position where they had no choice. I stopped her right there. That's not an apology, I told her. That's deflection. If you can't take full accountability, there's nothing to talk about. She went quiet for a second, then the tears started again. She cried about how she didn't know how to fix this, how she never wanted things to end up this way, how she just wanted to go back to being a family. Then my dad got on the phone. He didn't bother with the fake emotional act. He got straight to the point. We just need help. We're out of options. And there it was. They weren't calling to fix anything. They weren't calling because they cared. They were calling because they were desperate. I told them the only thing I was willing to do was help my sister if she ever wanted to leave home, but I wouldn't be giving them a dime. That's when my dad lost it. He exploded, calling me heartless, telling me I owed them for raising me, that they had sacrificed so much for me, and this was how I repaid them. I didn't say another word. I just hung up. For the first time, I felt nothing. No guilt, no doubt, just clarity. They hadn't changed, they never would, and I wasn't going to let them drag me back into their mess. The moment I hung up, I knew I was done. For a while I waited, expecting my parents to try again, maybe another message, another attempt to guilt me into giving them what they wanted. But instead, they went silent. Then my sister texted. She told me our parents had declared that I was dead to them. No more messages, no more attempts at reconciliation. They were cutting me off again. But this time, I didn't care. Then my sister said something else. She was done too. She had put up with their behavior for years, but after everything that had happened, she couldn't do it anymore. The constant fights, the toxic environment, the pressure to take their side, it had all become too much. She was finally ready to leave. I told her she could stay with me, no hesitation. She didn't respond right away, but the next day she messaged me again. She was serious. She was done. And that's when I found out just how bad things had gotten for our parents. My aunt, the one who had been keeping me updated, called me again. She told me that nearly everyone my parents had once cut off had refused to help them. Every bridge they had burned, every person they had written off, it had all come back to haunt them. They were alone, and now they were selling the house. My sister confirmed it later. Our parents were downsizing. They couldn't afford to keep the place anymore. Their financial situation had hit rock bottom, and with no one left to turn to, they had no choice but to move. I checked their Facebook out of curiosity, and sure enough, the bitter posts kept coming. More vague, manipulative messages about selfish children and being betrayed by the ones you love most. I ignored all of it. Instead, I focused on getting my sister out. The day she moved in, it was like watching a weight lift off her shoulders. She wasn't just relieved, she was free. A few days later, our parents sent one final message. They blamed me for everything. They said I had destroyed the family, that I had turned my sister against them, that they had no choice but to move because of my selfishness. I left them on read, and that was it. For the first time in years, I felt free. No more walking on eggshells, no more waiting for the next explosion, just peace. My sister started focusing on her own life. She found a job, made new friends, started living the way she had never been able to under our parents' roof. My girlfriend and I, we were better than ever. Without the constant stress of family drama hanging over my head, I could actually enjoy my life. And then, something unexpected happened. Some of the same family members who had criticized me before, who had called me selfish and told me I should help my parents, started reaching out again. But this time, they weren't guilt-tripping me. They were admitting I had been right all along. They had seen the way my parents handled everything, the way they twisted the story, the way they tried to manipulate everyone. And now that my parents had no one left, it was becoming obvious to everyone just how much damage they had done to themselves. Their reputation crumbled. More and more people distanced themselves from them. They had used no contact as a weapon for years, cutting off anyone who didn't fall in line. But now, it had turned against them. They had cut off so many people that when they finally needed help, there was no one left to save them. I don't know if they'll ever truly apologize, but the truth is, I don't need them to. I'm done waiting for an apology that will never come. I've moved on. Weeks passed without a word from my parents. No texts, no missed calls, nothing. After the dramatic fallout, I figured they were either too proud to reach out again or too busy dealing with their mess. Either way, I wasn't complaining. Life was finally peaceful. Then, out of nowhere, a message popped up from my mom. "We need to talk, it's important." I stared at the screen. No build-up, no fake pleasantries, just straight to the point. At first, I debated ignoring it. I knew better than to believe she suddenly wanted to make things right. But curiosity got the best of me. A part of me wondered, was this finally the moment where they were actually ready to apologize? I replied with a simple, "What's going on?" The response came fast. My dad was sick, nothing life-threatening, but serious enough that he couldn't work. She played it off like she was just updating me, but the tone was clear. She was hoping for sympathy. I kept my response short. "I hope he gets better." That wasn't what she wanted. The next message was longer, laced with guilt-tripping about how family should be there for each other in hard times, how even after everything they still loved me, how it wasn't too late to put the past behind us. I didn't answer. An hour later, my sister called. She had heard about the message and warned me that things were getting bad at home. My mom was breaking down, going on and on about how I had abandoned them. My dad was angrier than ever, claiming he always knew I'd turn my back on them one day. Then the extended family got involved. A couple of distant relatives started messaging me, acting like mediators. Some urged me to make peace, saying you only get one set of parents. Others told me flat out, don't fall for it, they just want money. I already knew the answer, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. I didn't wish harm on my dad, but I also remembered how easily they cut me out, how they didn't care until they needed something. That's when my girlfriend reminded me, they only reach out when they need something, and she was right. Then my mom made her next move, another Facebook post, this time about how families should stick together in times of crisis, about how some people forget what really matters. The comments started rolling in, people asking what was going on, sending her support, feeding into the act. I had enough. I sent one final message. I'm not responsible for fixing this. You made sure of that when you cut me off. Minutes later, my dad fired back with a nuclear text. He called me cold-hearted, selfish, and ungrateful. Said that one day I'd regret this, that when it's too late I'd come crawling back, but by then I wouldn't be welcome. I blocked him. For the first time, I felt no hesitation about doing it. And just like that, I was done. I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel conflicted. I was finally free. A year passed. No family drama, no guilt-tripping texts, no explosive phone calls. For the first time in my life, I felt completely free. My sister had fully settled into her new life. She found a stable job, started saving money, and had completely distanced herself from our parents. She didn't even check in on them anymore. Not because she didn't care, but because she knew exactly what would happen if she did. She was finally living for herself. Then I heard through the grapevine that things had only gotten worse for my parents. They had to sell their house. After years of controlling everyone around them, burning every bridge, and acting like they were untouchable, they ended up in a much smaller place, barely scraping by. They had no safety net, no one left to call in favors from. Every person they had cut off was gone for good. But instead of taking accountability, they stuck to their usual script. My mom kept posting vague, bitter messages online, more dramatic paragraphs about how loyalty is dead these days, and how some children forget the people who raised them. It was the same pity routine, just more desperate now. It didn't work. People stopped engaging. The relatives who had once defended my parents had backed off, and my dad's reputation took a hit. For years, he had always managed to twist situations in his favor, making himself seem like the strong, righteous one. But now, even the people who used to be on his side could see it. He had driven everyone away. And still, no apology, no accountability. Then, in the middle of all this, something incredible happened. I got engaged. After everything, my girlfriend had stood by me through it all. She saw my worst moments, watched me struggle with breaking away from my family, and never once pressured me to act against my own best interest. So, I proposed, and she said yes. We kept it private at first, only telling close friends and family, the people who actually mattered. But somehow my mom found out, and suddenly, after a whole year of silence, she messaged me. Not a single mention of the past, no acknowledgement of everything that had happened, just an enthusiastic, "I can't believe you didn't tell me. Family should celebrate together." I shut it down immediately. "You made it clear I wasn't family when you cut me off." That hasn't changed. That should have been the end of it, but my mom wasn't done yet. She started calling over and over, leaving voicemails about how she wanted to fix things and make things right. She didn't care about me, she didn't care about my happiness, she just didn't want to look bad. My sister confirmed it later. Our parents weren't trying to make amends, they were panicking. They knew people would wonder why their own son was getting married and didn't even invite them. So, I did what I should have done a long time ago. I blocked her, both of them, permanent. No more second chances, no more waiting for an apology that would never come. Now my only focus is planning my wedding with the people who actually care about me, people who don't use love as a weapon. The cycle of no contact they used against everyone else finally caught up to them, and I have no intention of fixing it. Months passed, and my parents stayed blocked. No texts, no calls, no fake reconciliation attempts. For the first time, it actually seemed like they had given up. Then my aunt called. She had some news. My mom had tried one last time to reach out, this time through a fake Facebook account. The profile was barely set up, just a default photo and a name that wasn't hers, but it didn't take much to figure out who it was. The message was long, manipulative, and followed the same script she always used. "Time is running out. One day, you'll regret not making things right. No matter what happens, we're still your parents. I don't want you to look back and wish you had been there for us when you had the chance." It was the same guilt-tripping, just dressed up in a different way. I laughed. I had seen this tactic before, and I wasn't falling for it. I didn't reply. I didn't even entertain the idea. Instead, I focused on my own life. By now, my parents had burned every bridge they had left. Almost no one in the family wanted anything to do with them. At first, they had tried reaching out to distant relatives, but even those people had caught on. It wasn't about making amends, it was about survival. People had finally realized they only reached out when they needed something. The last time my aunt had spoken to them, they were still struggling financially. Downsizing hadn't been enough. They were barely keeping up. My dad's health had also gotten worse. But instead of reflecting on how they had ended up here, he was still bitter, still blaming everyone else. Not my problem. I had bigger things to focus on. My wedding was only a few months away. For the first time in my life, I felt peace knowing my parents wouldn't be there. No tension, no stress, just a day surrounded by people who actually cared. My sister was more excited than anyone. She had completely built a life for herself away from our parents. She had grown so much in just a year, her own job, her own place, real independence. And now she was standing by my side at my wedding, finally free from the toxicity we both grew up with. Then my mom made one last public meltdown, another dramatic Facebook rant. It's heartbreaking when your own children abandon you. I don't know how we got here, but I still pray that one day things will be different. This time, no one engaged, no sympathy, no comments, just silence. By now, everyone knew the truth. The people who actually mattered in my life weren't bound by blood. My friends had shown me more love, support, and loyalty than my parents ever had. Family isn't about DNA, it's about the people who show up for you. Then, the final attempt, a message from my mom's real account, somehow slipping through despite being blocked. I didn't even open it. I deleted it instantly. She had nothing left to say that I needed to hear. My dad? Still the same, still blaming everyone but himself, still bitter. His health had declined, but even that hadn't changed his attitude. He had a choice, just like my mom did. They both had so many chances to make things right. They refused every single one. Now they had to live with the life they created. I never responded. I never reached out. Instead, I packed for my honeymoon, knowing that I was walking into a future free of guilt, free of their baggage, free of them. And for the first time, I truly understood how freeing it is to walk away from people who refuse to change. They spent years using no contact as a weapon. In the end, it was the very thing that destroyed them. And the best part? I never had to lift a finger.